One of the big issues we're going to talk about now is Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator Cruz, thank you for joining us this morning. And I do want to get to guns, but first that breaking news that I spoke with Senator Klobuchar about, Justice Kavanaugh. You're a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee as well. What do you make of these new revelations coming from the New York Times, the calls from your fellow Texan Julian Castro to impeach Justice Kavanaugh?
Well, George, good morning. Good to be with you. I read that New York Times article this morning. You know, I got to say, they apparently spent 10 months with undercover reporters trying to track down every person that went to school with Justice Kavanaugh 30 years ago. You know, it's an amazing level of reporting, trying to just really dig up any dirt they can on the guy. I think that follows up with the rather shameful circus we saw during the confirmation hearing, where they took allegations, they sat on them, they didn't make them public, that they revealed them at the 11th hour. And you know what? The Judiciary Committee did what we should have done. We held a hearing. We invited the principal witness to testify. We heard it. The American people heard it. And at the end of the day, the American people made a judgment that the evidence wasn't there, the corroboration wasn't there. And I think this article just shows the obsession with the far left, with trying to smear Justice Kavanaugh by going 30 years back with anonymous sources. It really is another sign of how nasty and divided the time is today.
You say the corroboration isn't there, but one of the points the article makes is that 25 witnesses weren't even interviewed by the FBI, and a person named who was making allegations wasn't interviewed by the FBI at all. That's part of their point, that it wasn't an adequate investigation.
Well, to be clear, the allegations the Senate Judiciary looked at and considered were the allegations from Dr. Ford, the allegations of sexual assault that the committee rightly said, if this happened, this is a serious allegation. And we scheduled a hearing. We invited Dr. Ford to testify. We actually gave Dr. Ford the opportunity to testify in private if she preferred. Amazingly enough, she testified at the hearings. Her lawyers never passed that on to her. She said she didn't want to be in that public hearings, but her lawyers apparently kept that a secret. And what you saw is you really saw the Democrats, I think, taking advantage of Dr. Ford and turning it into a circus. You know, we saw a Spartacus moment in the middle of it, which showed just how ridiculous the entire proceeding was. But at the end of the day, we listened to the evidence. We listened to all of the potential corroborating witnesses for Dr. Ford. The FBI interviewed them, examined them. Their testimony did not corroborate her allegations. And the American people had a chance to look Judge Kavanaugh in the eye, now Justice Kavanaugh, and to hear his explanation. And at the end of the day, I think this is the New York Times just being bitter enders. And you know what? I bet you the next Democratic debate, they'll all be saying impeach Kavanaugh, impeach Trump. There's nobody they don't want to impeach. And at some point, they just have to let the anger go and recognize that the democratic process actually moves on. And I think it's time for them to do that.
Let's talk about the democratic process in relation to guns right now. Of course, your state has been rocked by those two recent shootings. And the latest poll coming out this week from Quinnipiac in Texas shows that about 90%, almost 90% of Texans support extending background checks to private sales. So does your Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Says it makes no sense to allow strangers to sell guns to others in private sales. Does he have a point?
Well, listen, we absolutely need to do more. We need to strengthen background checks. And I'll tell you, George, I'm a Texan. I was in Odessa in the days following that horrific shooting. I was in El Paso in the days after that shooting. Before that, I was in Sutherland Springs the day after that shooting, standing in that beautiful sanctuary covered with blood. I was in Santa Fe High School. It's less than an hour from my house. I was there that morning of the shooting. I have been with these victims. I've been with first responders. I've been with families who are crying. And let me tell you, George, we've seen too damn many of these in the state of Texas. So we need to end them. Absolutely, yes. Now, the question is, what do we need to do that actually works? And this is where I get frustrated with Democratic politicians in Washington, because the proposals they're putting forward would not have stopped a single one of these mass murderers. Here's what we need to do. I introduced in 2013, my first few months in the Senate, legislation with Chuck Grassley called Grassley Cruz that targets felons, it targets fugitives, it targets those with dangerous mental illness. It improves and strengthens the background checks. It stops criminals and those with dangerous mental illness from getting firearms, and those who commit felonies, it puts them in prison to actually stop these crimes.
But what about
we got in 2013, a majority of the Senate voted for Grassley-Cruz, 52 senators, 9 Democrats. It got enormous bipartisan support. But sadly, Harry Reid and the Democrats filibustered it, which was a cynical decision. What we need to do right now, we need to take up Grassley-Cruz and pass it so we can stop these felons and fugitives and people with dangerous mental illness from getting guns and committing these horrific crimes.
What about expanding the background checks to private sales? If the president gets behind that, will you?
You know, George, the problem with that proposal, and that is the proposal, you've teed on the one that the Democrats focus on obsessively. It would not have stopped even a single one of these mass shootings. It's not a proposal designed. If you say, we want to stop these shootings, their proposal doesn't do it. But you know what it does? As soon as you have every person private to private transaction, if you have a grandfather giving his grandson a shotgun to go bird hunting, if you have a federal government background check for that, what you will see the next step to be is the only way to enforce that is a federal gun registry. And a gun registry is the step you need for gun confiscation. And by the way, George, as you know, we now have 3 of the 10 Democratic presidential candidates actively advocating for gun confiscation. They are saying the federal government is going to come forcibly take your guns. So look, I think that is a bad idea. The federal government should not be confiscating guns from law-abiding citizens. But here's what we should be doing. We should be doing what will stop murders like this, which is taking guns away from felons and fugitives, which is prosecuting felons and fugitives who try to illegally buy guns, which is making straw man purchases illegal. I've introduced legislation to do that. I pressed for it. I spoke this week to both Mitch McConnell and President Trump, urged both of them, take up Grassley-Cruz. Let's stop the criminals, and let's protect the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens.
Let's talk about the political situation in Texas right now. The latest polls show that President Trump is underwater. His disapproval around 50%. You've already had 5 Republican House members announce that they're not going to run next year. And you actually sounded the alarm this week saying Texas is a battleground in 2020. That's really saying something, that the state of Texas is going to be a presidential battleground next time around.
Well, look, I think that's right. I think Texas is divided. I think our country is divided. I will say, George, I think Thursday night was a very bad night for the Democrats. I think Thursday night the Democrats galloped even further to the left. If you look at Thursday night, the entire night of the debate, not a single Democrat talked about jobs. Not a single Democrat talked about the economy, about the fact that we've got the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded or the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. Instead, what the Democrats told the American people is they want to raise your taxes. They want to triple the price you pay for a gallon of gas at the pump. They want open borders. They want to take away your health insurance, and they want to take away your guns. Listen, that is an agenda designed to resonate in the faculty lounges at an Ivy League college. If you're sipping sherry in a faculty lounge, you've got your party. But show me one steel worker, show me one truck driver, show me one person in America who actually works for a living who's interested in that radical agenda. And the problem is, George, I think Donald Trump has broken the Democratic Party. Well, they are defined now just by hating him. They ought to be the party of jobs. They used to be a party focused on jobs. They're not anymore.
Let me close with a question what he's done to the Republican Party. Boy, when you ran against Donald Trump, you did not mince any words. Called him a pathological liar, a bully. He said, imagine what would happen in the next 5 years if he were president. Now you're supporting him for re-election. He's unified the Republican Party behind him as well. How do you explain that? Were you just wrong then? What changed?
Results matter. We've delivered on policy. For 2.5 years, I've worked very closely with the president, and we've seen remarkable results for the American people. We passed the biggest tax cut in a generation. That's a big deal. I worked hard to bring Republicans together to deliver on that. We've repealed hundreds of job-killing regulations. That's incredibly important because the result is the economy's taken off. We have the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We've got, the numbers came out just the other day. African-American poverty is the lowest we have ever recorded. Hispanic poverty is the lowest we've ever recorded. Those are real results. 6 million people have come off of food stamps. Those are lives being changed. Not only that, our nation safer. We're rebuilding our military. We're standing by our friends and allies. We're standing up to our enemies. And we've confirmed 150 new constitutionalist judges to the bench. Those are real results. And so, listen, yes, in 2016, I had a vigorous primary where we had a significant contest. The people decided the election is over. Donald Trump is our president, and I had a job to do. Represent 28 million Texans, and I've done that each and every day. And I'm proud of the results that working together we've been able to produce. And I think the American people want to continue seeing jobs and economic prosperity going forward.
Senator Cruz, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, George.